This is a CAT 2022 RC, which is from the philosophical genre, specifically around Stoicism. Now, one challenge which many CAT aspirants face when they're reading abstract passages is to retain the focus for the entire passage. In such cases, reading the questions first is ultra helpful because we also know what are the parts that we need to especially focus on. Now, in this first question, for example, we have a sentence that is given in quotes. This means that this sentence is there in the RC itself. So we're going to look out for it. So it'll make sense to perhaps look out for words like meditation and right attitude. The second question is about a specific example which would be given in the passage about Marcus Aurelius. So we have to understand the context of the passage and the example and then see which of these four options can be inferred from that example. While this is an inferential question, since it's about a specific example, if that example is contained in one or two paragraphs, we can solve it immediately after. Which one of the following statements, if false, could be seen as contradicting the facts or arguments in the passage? This is an inferential question, a little bit complicated because of if false, but we'll solve it at the end and I'll teach you a shortcut for this as well. This question is what I call a direct multiple question. It's something which we can directly answer based on the passage, but the answer is going to be found from multiple paths because we need to find which one of the following statements is true. So out of all of these four, only one will be true. So we'll have to validate all of the four options with the passage. Whichever one is given in the passage, that would be the right answer. We'll solve the third and the fourth question after we are done reading the passage, but the first and second question could be solved as in when we come across this. So now let's start with the passage itself. Stoicism was founded in 300 BC by the Greek philosopher Zeno and survived into the Roman era until 300 AD. So the names and the dates are not very important. In case if we have Zeno or the time mentioned in any option, we can always come back and validate. It's enough to learn that this is a philosophical concept because it's something which was founded by a philosopher. So in case if you don't know anything about Stoicism, it's enough to infer at this point that it's some branch of philosophy which was there during ancient times. Now this becomes the crux of Stoicism. According to the Stoics, emotions consist of two movements. The first movement is the immediate feeling and other reactions, that is the physiological response. Then we have an example to help us visualize and understand this. For instance, consider what could have happened if an army general accused Marcus Aurelius of treason, betraying his country or betraying perhaps the army. The first movement for Marcus may have been surprise and anger, accompanied perhaps by involuntary physiological and expressive responses such as face flushing, movement of the eyebrows. So when it comes to Stoicism, the initial response is more of an emotional response, right? So in this case, if somebody is attacking Marcus Aurelius and saying that he's guilty of treason or betrayal, he'll feel surprised or he'll feel angry. There would be perhaps some facial expressions also which would come in. The second movement is what one does next about the emotion. So here we are speaking about what one does. So we've gone from emotion to action. Second movement behaviors occur after thinking and are under one's control. Now you can see this surprise or anger is we're not that much in control. If somebody accuses us of treason, we are going to be surprised or we are going to be angry. There could be other emotions like fear and all which could also come in. So that's not so much under our control. That's more of a reaction to what's basically happening over here. But the second movement is something which we do after thinking, and that is something which is more under our control. The author has also given similar examples. So it might have included a plot to seek revenge, action signifying deference and appeasement, or perhaps proceeding as he would have proceeded, whether or not this event occurred, continuing to lead the Romans in a way that Marcus Aurelius believed best benefited them. So the author is coming up with this example about Marcus Aurelius and helping us understand the difference between the first movement, which is the immediate feeling, the immediate emotional reaction, and the second movement, which is the action. Now at this point, we can actually solve the second question. Now for us to solve this question, it's important to remember that this is just an example which is given. So the author is starting with for instance. For instance or for example is what we use when we are starting with an example. And here the author is saying, consider what could have happened if this had happened. So it's not even necessary that this is something which actually happened. This is probably something which the author is providing here just as an example to help us visualize. So if some army general accuses Marcus Aurelius, he could be surprised, he could feel angry, his facial expressions could change. And then the second movement would essentially be maybe trying to seek revenge, maybe trying to appease the person, perhaps trying to say, no, I'm not, committing treason or anything. Or maybe just, ignoring it and continuing to lead the Romans in the way that he thought was best. So from all of this, one thing which we can infer is Marcus Aurelius is probably someone who is Stoic, who believes in Stoicism. Otherwise, why at all would this example be given? The second thing that we definitely know is that he is leading the Romans and he is connected to the army in some form. So let's say you are not sure who Marcus Aurelius is, it doesn't matter. From this, we can actually infer and answer the question. So let's look at the 4 options. Marcus Aurelius plotted revenge in his quest for justice. So this is possibly one of the actions that he could have done. It might have included a plot to seek revenge, action signifying appeasement. If you see, taking revenge against someone and appeasing someone. And the third one, ignoring it and just going ahead with what he thinks is best. All these are very different. So he can't do all 3. He's going to do any one of these only. And that also is in a fictional example. So this is not something which we can infer. If at all this had happened, this is something which he may or may not have done. And we also know that a reasoned, unemotional response is appropriate for a Stoic. So if we go with the assumption that Marcus Aurelius is a Stoic, probably revenge is not what he would have gone for. In any case, this option is something which we will not consider because this is just an example. This is not a true incident. The author is not saying, for example, consider what happened when an army general accused Marcus Aurelius. Then that would mean that it's something which has occurred and which we are aware of. Maybe there's some writing or something like that. We are saying what could have happened if. So this is something which has probably not happened. And we can eliminate the 4th option also using the same logic. This is just an example. One, we don't know that this actually happened. Second, if it did happen, we don't know what is the emotion that he felt. So 1 and 4 can be eliminated using logic. Now, if you look at the second option, Marcus Aurelius was one of the leaders of the Roman army. Since an army general, which is somebody in a senior position, is accusing him, and we know that he was leading the Romans, this is something which we definitely can infer. So this is probably the right answer, but let's just look at option 3 and see if that's better. Marcus Aurelius was a Stoic whose philosophy survived into the Roman era. Now, Marcus Aurelius was a Stoic is probably something which we can infer. Why else would the author have spoken about him at all? But whose philosophy survived into the Roman era doesn't make sense. It was Zeno's philosophy, with Stoicism, which survived into the Roman era. Marcus Aurelius was someone who was leading the Romans. That means he was living in the Roman era. So this second part is something which is wrong, and hence we go for the second option over here. In case if you're a little worried that, okay, can I actually go ahead and solve a question then and there? What you can do is you can mark this question for review after solving it. And once you're done with the passage, if there's anything else about Marcus Aurelius, you can come back and change your answer if needed. Now, very quickly, Marcus Aurelius was actually the Roman emperor. But if you didn't know that, it doesn't actually stop us from solving the question. Now, if you did know this and you're wondering, but if he's the emperor, how can we say that he's one of the leaders of the Roman army? Remember that a lot of kings would actually lead their army, right? So there have been a lot of Indian kings, also kings like Alexander and all, who are very famous for having led their army. In fact, in India, in our history, we've had so many stories of kings and queens who have led or who have fought in the army. So even if Marcus Aurelius, we know that he's an emperor, that doesn't stop him from being one of the leaders of the Roman army. Now, when it comes to an abstract RC, even if we don't have too many inferential questions, I've generally found that taking a few short notes helps me focus. So you're welcome to try this method. Now, in Stoicism, we basically been told that there are 2 movements. The first is the initial emotional and physiological reaction. So I'll just write emotional reaction. So this is the first one. The second is the action after thinking. So this is the initial reaction. The second is the action which is taken after thinking. And here the author is saying that it has to be a reasoned, unemotional response. So this is according to Stoicism. In the next paragraph, we understand a little bit more about this philosophy. The Stoics believe that to lead the good life and be a good person, we need to free ourselves of nearly all desires, such as too much desire for money, power, or sexual gratification. Prior to second movement, which is this one, we can consider what is important in life. Money, power, and excessive sexual gratification are not important. Character, rationality, and kindness are important. So one more thing which we know is that we have to free ourselves from desires and we should be focusing on character, rationality, I'll just put reason, and kindness, again I'm just writing kind, instead of money, power, or sexual gratification. The Epicureans, first associated with the Greek philosopher Epicurus, held a similar view. So the Epicureans had a similar view, believing that people should enjoy simple pleasures such as good conversation, friendship, food, and wine, but not be indulgent in these pursuits. So the Epicureans felt that people should enjoy these simple pleasures, talking to a friend, having a friend, food, and wine, but not be indulgent in it. As in, don't keep indulging or don't keep wanting to always have good food, wine, friendly conversation, and so on. Enjoy it when it happens. That's about it. And not follow passion for those things that hold no real value, like power or money. So don't be very passionate about things like power and money. They also felt that it doesn't have any real value. So similar thing is repeated over here. The Epicureans articulated enjoyment of relationship with friends, of things which are real rather than illusionary, simple, not artificially inflated, possible, not unlikely, and so on. In sum, these ancient Greek and Roman philosophers saw emotions, especially strong ones, as potentially dangerous. They viewed emotions as experiences that needed to be reined in and controlled. So here again we know that the emotion has to be controlled. Now the other thing that we are learning is Stoics are similar to Epicureans who believe that we should enjoy simple pleasures but not indulge and not chase some of the similar things as what's being told here. Now thus far we've still not come to this meditation and the right attitude, so let's keep reading. Now as Oatley points out, that this is probably like maybe a paper which was published in 2004 or a book or something like that. The Stoic idea bears some similarity to Buddhism. So it's similar to Epicureanism, it's also similar to Buddhism. And again just writing B here, we don't have much space. Buddha, living in India in the 6th century BC, argued for cultivating a certain attitude that decreases the probability of destructive second movements. Now, what they've done here is, whatever Buddha said, they've converted it slightly into Stoic terms. So in Stoic terms, we have that initial emotional reaction, and then there is an action taken after thinking, which should be done once our emotions are under our control, and it should be more after rational thinking. So the Buddha has recommended a certain attitude which decreases the probability of this action being destructive. So again, similar to what the Stoics want. They want the right thing to be done by controlling emotion. Through meditation and the right attitude, now this is the sentence we have, through meditation and the right attitude, one allows emotions to happen to oneself. So if we take up meditation, if we have the right attitude, emotions will happen. We'll feel those emotions. But one is advised to observe the emotions without necessarily acting on them. So in the example which was given of Marcus Aurelius, for example, if something like that happens to us or to anybody, we'll feel those emotions. But we should observe the emotion and not act on them. So if we feel angry in that scenario that somebody is accusing us, we should observe that we are angry, but we shouldn't necessarily act on them. That way, we achieve some distance and decide what has value and what does not have value. So we have a little bit of a distance from the emotions, in that our emotions are not really controlling us. We are able to distance ourselves. Then we'll be able to act in a way that has value. So we'll be able to rationally decide what has value and what doesn't, rather than acting on our emotions. Now, here we have the same sentence which is given in the first question. And if you see, the next sentence is speaking about something else. It's speaking about different religions. So since this sentence is about Buddhism, we can solve this question right here. So the question is, which of the following is not a possible implication of the quoted statement? That means 3 of the options given here can be inferred based on this sentence. One of them won't be. So this is similar to what I call a meaning question, where there's a phrase or a sentence from the passage. We need to understand it in the context of the passage and especially that paragraph. Find out the three options which are implied or which can be inferred based on this statement, and then find the one which is not, and that becomes our answer, because here we are being asked which is not a possible implication. So let's look at the four options. Meditation allows certain out-of-body experiences that permit us to gain the distance necessary to control our emotions. Now, when we are saying meditation allows certain out-of-body experiences, an out-of-body experience is when we feel as if we are not in our body, we are somewhere else. So if I'm sitting over here and talking with you, for example, if I'm having an out-of-body experience, I might feel that I'm on the other end of the room, or maybe, floating on top or something like that. And that is not what the Buddha has said, right? We've been told that we have to observe the emotions and achieve some distance. By achieving some distance, we are not literally achieving distance. It's not like, if someone's feeling angry, they're able to take the anger 10 feet away or get 10 feet away from their body and actually be out of their body. They're basically not letting the emotions control them. That is what is meant by achieving some distance. So we are not in the grip of the emotion anymore. We are still able to behave in a rational way. The reaction that we have, the action which we take, will be rational and not emotional. So this ideally should be the right answer, because this is taking that distance part literally. Now let's just read the other options and make sure that they are implications of this sentence. Meditation and the right attitude in this instance implies an initially passive reception of all experiences. So initially passive. Now this is something which is mentioned. The author is saying through meditation and the right attitude, one allows emotions to happen to oneself, but one is advised to observe the emotions without acting on them. So if we are observing our own emotions and not acting on them, then we are not active at that point. We are passive. So this is something which definitely can be inferred, because it's speaking about the initial part. Initially we are passive, and then after that we are reacting in a rational way, not based on the emotion. So we can eliminate the second option. Now the third option, we've been told that emotional responses can make it difficult to distinguish valuable experiences from valueless experiences. Now this is something which is definitely right, because we can decide what has value and what does not have value only after observing our emotion and achieving some distance. And this is something which we can also infer. If something negative happens and we feel angry or any other negative emotion, then it is going to be difficult for us initially to react in the right way. A lot of times if we get angry, we might end up shouting, we might end up doing something that we regret. So this is also something which is true, especially because the examiners have said can make it difficult, right? It's not that it will always be difficult, but it could be difficult. So we can eliminate the third option. The observation of emotions in a distance manner corresponds to the second movement referred to earlier in the passage. So initially we were told that Stoicism has an initial emotional reaction, and then there's an action which is taken. So the initial reaction will happen, but with meditation and right attitude, we can observe our emotions, achieve some distance, and then act. So that is nothing but our second action according to Stoicism, so, which is why both of these are similar. So this is also something which can be inferred. So option 1 is the only one which is not implied, because this achieving distance from the emotion is being taken literally here. So thus far we've learned that Stoicism recommends that even though we'll have an emotional reaction initially, we should take some time and take a rational action. We should also not really, we need to free ourselves from our desire. We need to focus on character, rationality, kindness. And this is something which is similar to the Epicureans and also similar to Buddhism. Then the author also tells us the Stoic idea of developing virtue in oneself, of becoming a good person, that which we could do because we have a touch of the divine, laid the foundation for the three monotheistic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. So Stoicism itself led to Judaism, which is the Jewish religion, Christianity, and Islam. As with Stoicism, tenets of these religions include controlling our emotions lest we engage in sinful behavior. So here also it's about not giving in to our desires and controlling our emotions. So Stoicism also led to these three religions. So that's broadly it for the passage. Now we can quickly solve the fourth question, because this will be quicker, and then we'll come back to the third question, which is a tad trickier, but I will teach you a shortcut for it. On the basis of the passage, which of the following statements can be regarded as true? So that means out of all of these four, one option is going to be true. So we just need to find it. Now this is easy for us because we've just read that the Stoicism laid the foundation for these three religions, and the author saying Stoic influences can be seen in multiple religions. So this has to be the correct answer. Now remember, Buddhism is something which happened before. Epicureanism is also something which might have happened before or around that time, it's anyway not a religion. But Buddhism was in the 6th century and not really influenced by Stoicism. It's the other way around. But these three religions definitely have been influenced by Stoicism. So this should be the right answer. The Stoics valorized the pursuit of money, power, and sexual gratification. To valorize something is to say that this is a good thing to do, this is the right, the brave thing to do. But we know that the Stoics said that these are not the things that have any importance, or we should not really chase these. They are not important. So this is definitely wrong based on the passage. The Epicureans believed in controlling all emotions. Now the Epicureans or even the Stoics, they are saying that we need to control or rein in some emotions, especially the dangerous ones. Can we control all emotions? Probably not. In fact, the recommendation which is given is that, certain simple pleasures should be enjoyed when it happens. That is also a emotion. So we are not looking to control all emotions. This becomes a very extreme option. If you've gone through the elimination module that we have in our lessons, then this is something which you can easily eliminate because it is quite extreme. All of the philosophies which are mentioned here are saying that there will be some emotions. We just need to control the reaction and not react in the grip of that reaction if it's a negative one. There were no Stoics in India at the time of the Roman civilization. Now this is something about which we have no information, right? So we can't really say anything. We don't know if some Greek person actually came to India or some Roman person came to India, spread Stoicism, or like somebody was just visiting. There's nothing about this. So we can eliminate it and go for the first option here. Now coming to the third question, which one of the following statements, if false, could be seen as contradicting the facts or arguments in the passage? So usually we used to have questions like which of the following statements, if true, are strengthening or contradicting the passage. By adding part of it saying if false, they are adding a layer of difficulty. For example, if I have to change this sentence and make it false, in the Epicurean view, indulging in simple pleasures is not desirable would become, in the Epicurean view, indulging in simple pleasures is desirable. So if we convert every sentence and then see if it is contradicting the facts or the arguments of the passage, it is going to make it a little difficult for us. So we'll treat it as a double negative and we'll change it to if true could be seen as strengthening. So it's like multiplying with -1 on both sides. Now we'll probably end up finding one or two options which are strengthening the passage in its current form or which are in line with the passage in its current form. Only those one or two options we'll convert to false and see if it is definitely contradicting. So let's look at the first one. In the Epicurean view, indulging in simple pleasures is not desirable. This is something which is given because the author said that we should enjoy simple pleasures but not be indulgent in these pursuits. Now this is exactly why whenever we have an option like this, I always recommend that it's good to go back and validate, because just changing this indulgent for enjoying would actually convert this and make it correct, make it wrong, right? So indulging in simple pleasures is something which is not desirable. So this is strengthening or in line with what the author is saying. So we'll hold this option. Now let's read the others. Despite practicing meditation and cultivating the right attitude, emotions cannot ever be controlled. This is not something which is strengthening the passage, because we know that Buddhism is recommending that if you meditate and you have the right attitude, you can achieve some distance and react in a rational way, right? Even Stoicism is all about having the right attitude and behaving in an unemotional or rational way. So if this would be true, this is definitely weakening the passage, so we can eliminate it right away. In the Stoic view, choosing a reasoned emotional response as the first movement is an appropriate response to emotional situations. One small inaccuracy here, which is one of the usual techniques in CAT. Again, if you've gone through the elimination lesson, you should be able to find this. Choosing a reasoned unemotional response as the first movement. So this is wrong because the unemotional rational response is basically the second movement. The first movement, the authors mentioned that it will be an emotional reaction. Buddhism says that, more importantly, of course, Stoicism says that, and that is what the author is given in this example itself. He will, Marcus Aurelius, he will be surprised, he will feel angry, there'll be facial expressions and so on. It's only the second response, which has to be reasoned and unemotional. So this again can be eliminated. The last one is also easy to eliminate. The Greek philosopher Zeno survived into the Roman era until about AD 300. So that's saying that he lived for at least 600 years because he founded Stoicism in 300 BC. Stoicism survived till 300 AD. It was not Zeno who survived for so long. So this also can be eliminated. Now, because none of these options are in line with the passage, let's just look at the first one. If we convert it to false, will it contradict the passage? So converting it to false means, according to Epicureans, indulging in simple pleasures is desirable. So since the author has told us that we should not be indulgent, if indulging is desirable, it is contradicting the facts of the passage. So this becomes a correct answer. So that's it for this RC. If you're finding the passage difficult, I would definitely recommend read up a little about Stoicism, and also you can read up more around philosophy. So maybe start with Plato, Socrates, Aristotle. You can read a little bit of Indian philosophy, but as most CAT passages are from overseas sources, it definitely makes sense to read more about Greek philosophy or even some of the philosophical movements which happened later, philosophers like Nietzsche and all who came up much later as well. So that's it for this RC.